This episode is brought to you by Absolute Landscapes. Absolute Landscapes is a landscape maintenance company that focuses heavily on commercial property maintenance. Call today for information about the services we provide and how we can best help you. 803 427 5944.
So the way I normally do this, I just ask you guys to introduce yourself, and you can say, anything that you want to share, anything that you think is relevant, however you want to start a conversation. Because the reason I don't do introductions, if I do, it's probably certain I'm gonna leave something important out. So I just ask you guys to introduce yourself, and then we can go into the conversation from there.
Well, Cody, my name is Ernest Wood. I go by Ernie. I recently published a book. It was called Asshole to Awesome. It's a self-transformation book. Turned into a guy that I didn't really like to look at in the mirror. And then after doing that, I realized that a lot of men were in the same situation. So I created I call it the Master Your Life with Balance Blueprint. And I teach high achieving individuals now how to succeed and still have balance in their life. I get a lot of pushback at the beginning because everybody likes to say there is no such thing as balance and all that. But we figure it out, and we usually find out how we can fix and make their lives a little better, man.
Yeah, so I love that, man. So I guess first of all, the first thing would be Asshole to Awesome. That's the title of the book, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. And the reason I love that is because of the self-awareness that it takes for a person to acknowledge that about themselves. I speak a lot on this podcast about self-awareness. And I tell people a lot, I feel like self-awareness would alleviate, if not eliminate, a lot of problems that we have, but a lot of people, and I don't know, maybe you can, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. A lot of people, for some reason, it's almost like it's a weakness to be self-aware. If you say XYZ about yourself, you don't do this thing as well as you could, or you should do this a little bit better or whatever. It's like, I feel like a lot of us, man, we have a problem with that because unfortunately it feels like there's a sense of self-worth that's kind of tied to these external achievements, I feel like. And I think that's where the thing comes in, where people say, well, there's no such thing as balance. And it's like, I think, and this is from what I think from the outside looking in, maybe you can comment on this, but it's like fundamentally what that means is that some of these people have their whole identity attached to this, whatever this thing is they're working on, and that's like, man, I was just talking to a guy earlier today, and I said, if you have something, whether it's career, entrepreneur, whatever, entrepreneurship, whatever it is you're working on, that thing could fail. And that's like a fear. That's a valid fear. You could risk all your money, whatever. But then there's also another valid fear. Like, what if you do it and it works out and you have the success that you want, but you're still not fulfilled? Dude, that's like, that's crazy, man.
That is, and that's, that is crazy, dude, when you think about it. And I think a lot of people fall into that category of, even if they did succeed at what they're aiming at, they're still not going to be happy inside. And I was kind of like that for a long time. And it was just because I didn't like myself. I didn't have gratitude for anything. I just wasn't grateful for anything. And then too many of us try to compare our life with other people's lives, right?
Yep.
We work our ass off, excuse my language, but we work our ass off to be better than the neighbor or be better than that guy. We work hours on end just to have a better car or take a better vacation. And, like the materialistic being better than is just, I think it causes a lot of those issues, man. Like you just said, and having that ego, you got to get rid of the ego. You have to be proud and confident of who you are, but you can't be arrogant and have a huge ego, because you're going to fail. There's going to be hard spots, and you just got to learn from them. And like having that ego sometimes doesn't allow you to even learn from the failures, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and see, I think people like in your situation, because you work with people, I think you probably have a lot of experience with this, but it's like So, okay, you're coaching a person, you're helping a person out in some area of their life. How do you help this person if they can't even see the starting point of where they're at? You know, if there's no room for improvement, then I feel like in this person's mind, they, you know, if there's no room for improvement, they can't improve. You know, it's like, who was it? Somebody, I did a podcast with somebody, and unfortunately, who said this is slipping my mind right now, but he said, I know it was a gentleman, he said that if you put in a GPS, you know, you want to go to wherever, but you don't know where you're starting. You have no starting point. You're never going to get there because you don't know where to go, you know? And so that's this whole thing, man. I feel like that self-awareness, and maybe, is that what your book is about? Just kind of how to have that conversation with yourself, just how to just be real, or is it just about your personal experience? Or
Yeah, on the book. So on the book, I initially started writing it just because I needed to get it out, like out of myself.
okay,
But then from chatting with other people, like I started finding that a lot of people were in that same spot. Like you just said, they don't have the self-awareness. They don't even know, because so many of those self-help books I've read, I don't even know, 500. I've read so many self-help books, so many stuff, but a lot of them are in that same lane, right? And they tell you, you know, where to go or how to get there. But some people, I didn't even know where the hell I was.
right,
Like
yeah,
I didn't like where I was, but I didn't know where to go from where I was at. So being self-aware and knowing how to start is huge, man. And that's like, I love that you just said that whole self-awareness or that GPS thing, right? Because that's my thing. Like I try to create, everybody I work with, we work on the fundamentals, man. We try to create the best foundation possible by getting rid of some small habits and creating better habits, good habits. And we just pick that little thing apart until you've built this great foundation. Now you can just start succeeding from there. But unfortunately, our school systems don't teach us this stuff. Like you go to college and you get indoctrinated with some other crap that you didn't even go to college for. And they never talk about being self-aware, being, having a legacy, how to build a business, how to communicate with people, like your spouse, how to communicate with your kids. It's all this irrelevant bull crap. And yeah, so I think people are starting to kind of wake up to that, and being more aware of what's going on and how bad like the food system is, and how it really isn't a badge of honor to, only sleep 2 hours a night. No, it's going to destroy your life, right?
Yeah, and I love that we're touching on this right now, especially right now. What is this? 2 or 3 days after an election. I love that we're touching on this right now because I think these institutions like the education system that should educate people, but unfortunately, a lot of times I think you're right, it does indoctrinate people. I think it's like, I think you said it best. Why are we not taught self-awareness? Because it's like in these major institutions, it's like we're taught that, the or a system is a problem. The system is why your life is the way it is, or, this person or these people did this to you, and that's why your life is the way it is. And listen, I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying that is not a person or a group of people that are not responsible for some of these things that we're seeing. The problem I have with that is that it takes the power away from the person that they're talking to. For example, if I'm talking to a person who's in an education system or wherever it is they are, and I say, hey, your life is not where you want it to be because of some other person or some other thing. Okay, well then if that person believes me, then that person's going to have this philosophy of, oh, well, I can't do anything to change my life because it's on this other person or this other thing. And I'm not okay with that, man. I'm not okay. I think it's true for both ways. I think sometimes there are a system or a part of a system or people in a system who cause this damage. And I think a lot of times it's the person in that situation. But I think the problem I have with it is it takes the power away from those individuals that it's almost like it perpetuates that cycle and leaves them in whatever, rut they're in at the time. And I'm not okay with that, and again, I'm not trying to sound ignorant or anything. I know people don't have the same starting points and all that. I get all that. I do. But I'm saying on a mass scale, I'm not okay with that message being perpetuated.
I 100% agree. But, and I understand you have to tiptoe around some feelings every once in a freaking while, but I'm at the age that I don't really have to tiptoe around the feelings, man. Like, if you don't have accountability for yourself, it doesn't freaking matter where you started, man. There's somebody that started below where you're at. I guarantee it. And that has accomplished more than most people will ever accomplish in their life. It's just a it's a lack of discipline. It's a lack of discipline. It's a lack of accountability. It's a lack of it's just a lack, right? It's just because, again, so many people are allowed to blame the system, to blame the man, to blame whatever. Dude, I'm going to give you a story. I became a pretty bad racist for a long time because I was blaming the system. I lost a job because of affirmative action. And I had buddies beat up, sent to freaking, had to get helicoptered out to a hospital because he was a white guy. So it happens both ways. And for me, like, I was bad. Like, I had such a horrible mindset about it. But until I was able to take accountability for what I do and what I give out to the world, it wasn't going to change. And that's what I figured, man. Like, now I don't judge anybody, dude. Everybody has their own spot. Everybody has their own thing. And as long as you're putting your effort forward, that's all you can do. I had a little meeting last night, and we were talking about little acts of kindness. And it goes along with that self-awareness, right? My one buddy, super freaking cool dude, he had a doctor appointment like 2 months ago, and the receptionist was like, "Hey, my birthday's on your next thing." Oh, so cool, right? So he went and bought her these little bundt cake things, took it to her on her birthday for his next thing. And the girl started crying and like wrote him a thing, like just those little things, man. If people would pay more attention and do little tiny things like that, our world would be so much happier instead of going, "Oh my God, he's an ad," and whine and cry. It's
well,
crazy.
And that's, and see, this connection is phenomenal, man. Cause I love that you made this connection, cause that goes right in with what I'm saying. So if we hear these things and we believe that there's no power, we don't have the power to change these things for our life, then that drastically cuts down our belief in ourself. And it's like the story you just said, like everybody thinks that if you go out and change the world, you have to get on a stage and influence millions of people and do this great big and cure cancer and all this kind of stuff. Like, it's not about that, man. Like this, like you do like this guy you're talking about right now. You do this one thing, you do what you can do. You don't know how that affects that person. That might have been the only birthday acknowledgement she got that entire day. Like I think, and that's another thing too. We think that the world, like we have to make this huge thing to change the world, but it's like, that the one change that you do could change the world for somebody. Like that little one thing for that lady could have like really changed the way she saw the world that day.
Like the butterfly effect, or whatever they call it, right?
And I don't know, man. There's so much that goes into that. And then that makes me want to bring into this conversation. I think if we haven't mentioned this, it was on my mind to mention it, but it was the kind of looking at other people, like these celebrities or these people that are in business or whatever it is. It's like we put these people on a pedestal as if they are capable of doing something we're not. And so again, with this being an election season, it's easy for us to look at one person or the other and say, hey, this person can make these huge changes and do all these things. But it's like, why don't we think that about ourselves? Like, why are we not saying, like, we're putting these people on pedestals as if they're not human beings the way we are, And it's just, the reason that bothers me is because of the story that you just mentioned. It seems like an insignificant thing, the contributions that we could make. And it's just like, imagine for a second, if I think there's like 8 billion people. Imagine if like 8 billion people done something similar to what this guy did. Like, how different would the world be? If somebody just did one thing like that on one specific day, just imagine the world we would live in. If somebody did one nice thing like that just to a random person.
I honestly, that's like, I have a little app, and it's one of my goals every day is to do an act of kindness.
Hmm.
And it just, it's sometimes it's self-serving, because when you do that act of kindness, you feel better about yourself.
Yep.
But by doing that, but you give it out. Like my little thing right now, what I do is, I met a young little dude over in Kauai while I was over there, and he has leukemia. He's 7 years old, man. This little dude is a badass. He went up, he sang in front of this whole crowd, but all the proceeds from that, all the profits from my book, That Asshole to Awesome, are going to him. I did it for a month and it didn't get enough sales, so I'm going to try to do it for another month, and that's my little act of kindness, right? It's not going to be a life-changing money, but if it helps the family buy a couple, buy a ticket over to wherever they need to go or whatever, is it going to change their entire life? No, but at least, they know that somebody's out there and has their back.
Well, I think, yeah. Well, I think you're, like I said, it's easy to look at these things and think that, like, another person might do this or another person might do that. And it's easy to compare. I think comparison is, I think we had to be careful with comparison, man. That's a whole nother rabbit hole, because that's related. Like the social media is like a comparison machine. And I just feel like that is very dangerous for us. But I think it's just because of the nature of the culture that we live in. It's easy for you to have that thought process and say, well, it might not be that much, but I think it's everything, man. Even if it was $1, I think that's everything. Okay. Let me, I don't want to get too far away from this, because this is a hell of an introduction already. You said that you work mostly with men. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So what do you help?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry about that.
I was just going to say, what do you help men with? Is it this kind of thing, this mindset thing? Do you help them kind of, well, I don't want to speculate. I just maybe let you answer.
Yeah. So after I got done fixing myself, I chatted with a bunch of mostly fixing myself, right? I chatted with a bunch of other guys, and I kind of saw a theme in there. And then I started chatting with like higher achieving men, right? It's guys who've made a business that's reached a certain level. And there's always something missing. Like one guy who wanted to argue with me about balance. He weighed almost 400 pounds at one time, dude, and he ended up in the hospital. Another guy, he was working on his third wife, like he's finishing their third wife. I think.
Hey, are you still with me?
Yeah, I think we.
Okay, hang on just a second. I think you were talking about you were working with a guy, but I didn't hear anything about the guy after that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So from when I started figuring out there was something there that guys were missing, it was because a lot of successful guys are having issues in a certain area. Like one would be, I'll give you an example. One weighed almost 400 pounds and he ended up in the hospital. Another guy, he was working on his third wife, or actually going into divorce. Another guy, he just lack of energy, dude. I mean, he drinks probably 10 Red Bulls a day.
Wow.
And there's just always something. So I started, and like I chat with them, and everybody said the same thing. Oh, there's no such thing. Balance is a joke. Blah 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 blah. But then everybody only thinks of balance as like an equal time, right? And that's where they get lost in balance. For me, balance is having your four fundamentals, which are pillars, which I call them, is your physical health, your mental health, your relationship, and then your legacy. Your physical health, your physiology drives your psychology, right? So as long as and that's where I kind of start, is making sure that you get enough sleep, checking that out, and teaching people how to get more sleep, because we're so jacked up nowadays, because like we have the TV on, the computer on, the telephone on, and they mess up your circadian rhythm because they give off blue light, right? And blue light used to only happen from the sun. So our circadian rhythm was always set up by the sun.
Yep.
But now with this thing always on, now we don't produce melatonin correctly, and then our cortisol levels are super high, and there's all kinds of bad effects. So if we could start fixing like the sleep, and then all of a sudden, 78% of people are obese or overweight. 70% of people are in a constant state of dehydration, which is a huge one.
Yep.
Half the people don't even breathe right? Like they don't even breathe through their mouth, their nose. They breathe through their mouth, which is like, it's so many little things out there that can help a person be more balanced, because now they feel better. And if you feel better, now you're more focused. You can get your crap done way more efficiently, and maybe not spend the 16 hours at work. And you're spending 16 hours at work, and you're probably only working six of them.
Well, working efficiently, probably. I don't see how you're going to be there that long. And so these guys, man, I'm just curious, like, what are they? Do they think they're successful? Like, are they financially successful? They think they're pretty good on the outside. And the reason I'm asking is because I talked to a person one time who worked with specifically her thing was like midlife crisis people. She works with people who are experiencing that. And she said that like when these people get to that point, there's like no sense of identity. And I'm thinking like how, so I just think about where I want to be financially and successful and like, my future self, what I'm striving to be. It's like, I don't think I can get there without having that strong sense of self. You know what I mean? So like, how did these people get there? But then they feel like when they get there, and by the way, let me just time out. Let me just say, I don't think I have I don't think I have all the improvements that have been made. I think self-improvement is a continuous, never ending thing. But I'm just saying, I don't see how a person, myself or anybody, would get to a level of success without, having that strong sense of self with themselves. I mean, I don't see how it seems like backwards to me. You see what I'm saying? Like, how could a person get to that level without first, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of from the outside looking in, but, that's curious because you talk about these guys, these issues and these things that's kind of coming up, but I don't know. Are these people that you're talking about or that you work with, are they kind of at a level where they feel like they're good, financially or successful or otherwise?
See, and that's why like that. Yeah. The group that I work with is mainly, they make 250,000 a year or over.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of the guys that I've chatted with, I mean, they're 100 millionaires, like a bunch of business. But the big thing is, it's like you get so focused on your business, and your business almost becomes your identity for a little while, right? Because it is hard in today's world because there is so much competition. So there's so much competition that if you're not constantly growing your business, you're going to be falling backwards. And like I discussed or mentioned earlier, you're never taught these little things about, a lot of guys like to be physically fit, and it's usually just because then we look good in a t-shirt. So some chick, says, woo woo, whatever, right? It's not being physically fit so that our mental capacity is better and then our business works better. You just aren't taught those things. It's taught, hey, go work your ass off, go make as much money as you can. And that's success, right? That is a lot of people's actual mentality on success, is how much money they have in the freaking bank. And that's a negative way of looking at it, because like truly successful people, man, they are usually the most giving. Like they're huge philanthropists. They give, all the time. But they still, a lot of them lose a little part of their self. Either their kids might, hold a grudge because they never were there for their kids because they were too busy working. Their wife might be pissed. But that all comes back to like building a foundation, right? If you communicate and you allow them to be part of the journey, not like sitting on the sidelines, you allow them to be part of it, then that helps with that whole growth and balance and not losing yourself. It is easy to do, man, because when you start seeing that money flow in and that success, and everybody around you is, ooh, you're so great, and everybody's just kissing your butt all the time, and nobody says, nah, dude, you're freaking a dumbass. Like, you need to fix, like, look at you about ready to die, right? Nobody ever tells the successful or the boss that, hey, dude, you need some help, right? They're so used to telling everybody else what to do.
Well, but the best leaders though are the ones that can take that criticism and use it. You know, if you're working for a person or a company or whatever, and the person can't take criticism, I would really I would strongly encourage you to find another place of employment, because that's not, I don't feel like that's a, first of all, I don't feel like that's a healthy work environment. But second of all, I feel like part of a leader, of being a good leader, is that is like wanting that feedback and using that feedback in a productive way. You know, I'm kind of like where I'm at with this, man. I understand both sides of it. I understand the balance thing, and I also understand, you know, the grind part of it. And I know that you're not saying to not grind, but so I guess my philosophy on this has been that you should not consistently, not all the time, not, you know, all days 100%, but you should push yourself to where you think your limit is and even beyond that, and then use that to determine what you should do on a day-to-day routine basis. You know, because I think a lot of times I do think it's a bad thing that a lot of us don't know what our limits are. You know, you hear people say like, oh, well, most people are living at like 40% of their potential. And I mean, there's probably some truth to that, but at the same time, you don't even know where your limit is unless you try to push past that. Okay. So that's the first thing, but that doesn't mean try to kill yourself every day. You know, I mean, some people are great at working like 12 hours flat out. Some people can do that. Some people can only handle 6, whatever it is. But I think, like, for me, I think one of the things that I really appreciate about my journey of entrepreneurship and you know, all this stuff that I got going on is I kind of not force myself, but challenge myself to push a limit. But then I can back off from that and say, okay, well, you know, this might be too much for me to do, but this is what I can do optimally. This is how I can sustain what I'm trying to do here. And then I feel like, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Then I feel like once you know that, you can then take that and say, okay, if I'm going to, if it just, let's say it's 8 hours, that's my maximum day, is like 8 hours, just for the sake of conversation. So you say, okay, well, I can spend 3 doing this, I can spend 3 doing this, and I can spend 2 doing this. These 3, the first 3 of my 8 hours, I'm going to get more done than I would if I worked 12 hours straight, you know? And so I mean, just, it's different for every person. That's just obviously an example, but I feel like, and I'm not saying this is the right way, but I feel like that's the right way to do it, is kind of figure out, to gauge yourself, to see what you can do and sustain that. Because I think, and I know I'm speaking a lot here. I do want to get your thoughts on this, but I feel like, man, it's like for so long, there was just this philosophy of, you know, nose to the grindstone, grind all day, every day, work hard type thing. And I can't say that I fully support that. You know, I can't say that it's just all about making as much money as humanly possible. And I feel like even if you just take a step back and focus on your health, focus on your relationships, focus on your personal growth, I feel like the money will come anyways. You know, I feel like you'll get the success you want if you just, I guess, find the balance. I guess that's the critical thing here.
Well, there's a whole saying that happy people make more money, right? And it's actually a study done. And I agree with you, man. And I don't like, I know that, like, to get a business up and going, you have to bust your ass and you have to find your limits and you have to do these things. But like, my point is they don't have a foundation set. Like, they don't even know really where they're starting from, right? A lot of these guys know business because that's something that they learned or whatever, right? They know business, but the rest of it is just, it's never been taught. It doesn't get taught. It doesn't get that respect. Like, for you, that's awesome that you already have that mindset that, hey, to do this. What I have found, and through a lot of work and study, is most people can only focus, like, it's between like 20 and 40 minutes, like a true 100% focus, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how I set up all my days is mine is about 28 minutes. So I set up 28-minute blocks. I put on a timer, put on my freaking headphones or whatever I'm doing, and I nail it for 28 minutes. And then I get up, I walk around, I go do my push-ups. I have a little thing now. I'm doing 300 push-ups a day. But like, I always try to push myself in different little directions, just like you were saying, like finding that limit, right? And and working, like finding that for me, when I found that and I was able to help other people find that same little niche, like, hey, when I was this team lead at a car dealership, I had my 5 guys and we just worked. That was our way we worked throughout the day. They worked solid 22 minutes, 25 minutes, set up the timer, and then they went and took a break, man. They went and got some fresh air. They went and did whatever they needed to do, because if you're not truly focused, you're not working at 100%. And most people can't work that long at 100%. So, like, figure out what's your best time, what's your best, for, like you said, 3 hours out of the day, but you cannot focus for 3 hours straight out of that day, right? And if you didn't move for 3 hours straight, now your body's starting to feel like crap. So it's a lot about movement. It's a lot about getting in those at least 5,600 steps a day. There's all kinds of hormone stuff that happens at that. But when we sit here and we try to work so hard, and all of a sudden you look at the end of the day and you only moved 1,000 steps, those are the little things that people don't get and don't understand. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that, because, like, the obesity levels are so high. 131 million adults are on freaking prescription drugs, man. Like 80% of all the diseases out there can be freaking cured by just changing our food, changing our diet, and even our belly fat. It's just crazy. Like, It's nuts, man. And the numbers are crazy.
Well, and not to get political here, but I think this is a good time for it. I think we're about to head to that direction. I think I think Robert Kennedy Jr. has some very profound philosophies on that, because that's true, man. I mean, we have things in our food in America that are illegal in other countries, and it's like, how is this even a thing right now? Like, how are we? You look at, I don't drink soda, but if you look at a soda bottle from the U.S., look at a soda bottle from Europe, it's like half the ingredients, and and you're right. We obesity is such a big problem. I think it's something like 40% of children are considered obese.
Oh, it's higher now.
That's crazy,
it's higher
man.
Than that now. And dude, I'll give you a quick little story on that. So the FDA is 45% funded by the stupid, the food people that they're supposed to be regulating, right? And so we'll use Smucker's jam for an example. Smucker's jam, the first ingredient on it, say strawberry jam, is going to be strawberries. But why is that? It's because they broke sugar up into 6 different bullshit names, excuse my terminology, but names to not have sugar as the number one thing on their healthy jam. But if you put all the actual ingredients together, sugar should be number one. It's not healthy, and they're promoting it as a healthy thing, and they're able to do that because the people who are regulating them allow it to happen. So it's like, I agree with you, dude. I am so excited to see what Kennedy does, making America healthy again. And I've been on that little kick for probably about 4 or 5 years now.
For sure.
I mean, because sometimes,
like it's and I understand, and like I said before, I understand this isn't a black and white solution. I understand that income, is directly, like, people's what am I trying to say here? Quality food, like high quality food is actually nourishing, is expensive. I understand that. Now, why that is, I mean, that's a whole problem in itself. And I also understand that income is linked to, like, lower processed quality foods, and I understand that, and I get all that. And hopefully that's going to be, fixed here in the next little bit. But it's like, we have these, talking about Kennedy for a minute, we have these basically foods that are like, there's nothing there. There's no vitamins, there's no nutrients, there's nothing there. It's like sugars and dyes and whatever else. And let's talk about sugar, man, because so a while back, I went to, I try to eat pretty clean. I try to eat lean if I can. I'll spoil myself with a snack or something once in a while if it's a type of reward type thing. But I'm drinking coffee right here, and it's black coffee. I don't even put sugar in my coffee. But I went to this place, you see these Asian places or whatever, and they got the breading and the sauce on the chicken and stuff. And I went there by myself a while back, and I could tell it was like pretty heavy on the sugar. It was pretty and I guess it's the carbs or whatever. It was good food, but man, after I ate there, I felt I felt lazy and lethargic. And I told my girlfriend, I was like, this is how like most people feel like when you eat the high sugar breakfast and stuff, this pretty much just sugar, the whatever it is, the people are going to get mad at this, but the donuts and the pancakes or whatever, yeah, it's good. But it's like, dude, the mental clarity that you have, if you're going to eat something like that, eat it later in the day. Because like, I felt like I couldn't do anything for the rest of that day. You know what I mean? Like, it's the sugar crash and all that stuff. And I asked people that get their coffee, I was like, well, you're putting sugar in your coffee. Does all the junk you're putting in there not counter? Like, does that not like, balance out the effects of the coffee? Like, yeah, I feel like I would be back to baseline if I was taking in caffeine, but it had all this stuff attached to it. I don't know. But yeah, man, sugar, I think sugar's really, I don't think people really know the effects of sugar the way that, like you see these people who don't eat sugar at all, and they look like they're 20 years younger than what they are. I mean, it's crazy. Like sugar's crazy. Dude, but yeah, the health and the diet, man, that's a huge one.
I 100% agree, man. Sugar. Well, there's a few things, right? And the three major ones are sugar, the crap oils, right? You should only be using extra virgin olive oil or maybe an avocado oil, sometimes a coconut oil, like very high end. But the rest of that crap, dude, like the rapeseed oil or canola oil that they like to call it so we don't see rapeseed, it wasn't even found good enough to feed animals, man. And like it's horrible for your cardiovascular system, but yet that's what McDonald's uses now to cook our fries in. They used to use beef fallow, or whatever, however you pronounce it. And so just from the 70s, 80s to now, like that's the kind of crap that's killed the men. Like testosterone in men is down 40 some odd %. Like, and that's a very conservative number because there's some numbers that are saying 60 to 70%.
Yeah, I've seen 60. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's nuts. And that's the kind of crap that's killing us, man. It's those crappy oils, the flours and the sugars. Sugar does absolutely nothing good in your body. Actually, almost all carbs do not a whole lot of good in your body, right? Like the stuff from the fruit, it does its thing. But even fruit nowadays, there's a study show that a whole box of strawberries today, if you smash it down and get the nutrients out of it, it'll have less nutrients in the whole little thing than one strawberry did 30 years ago.
That's crazy, man.
Right.
But I mean, but that, like, you can't help but question that. Okay. So that processed food, it's not like actual food. It's just like the crackers or whatever, the stuff that's like, I understand that. But how does a fruit or a vegetable get to that point? Well, the only reason it gets there is because it was modified somewhere along the way. Somebody modified something somewhere. That's not a natural process for that thing to get like that.
Dude, see what they do to chickens, man. I mean, like a lot of people, the easiest one is see what they do to chickens, right? Because it used to take a chicken about 3 years to get the full maturity so they could cut it up, and we can have chickens. Now a chicken can get to double the size in less than 6 months. And that's all because of the freaking hormones they're sticking in those little things. The chickens, like most of these chickens can't even walk because they grow so fast that their bones don't even, so they're just fat little blobs on the side of the, in the tent or in the coop. And that's the kind of crap that and they just keep feeding us and feeding us and feeding us. And again, I'm going to go back to it. It's because the guys who are supposed to be regulating are getting paid by the guys they're supposed to be regulating. And like you said, modification of like our fruits and everything. I am big pharma, big food industry, all that big stuff has just gotten out of control because all it is looking for big profits and not looking out for the guy or anybody.
Yeah. And I know it seems like a depressing conversation, man, when we had this conversation, but I think people need to be aware of this because I think we need to know, what is actually going on with the food and the health and the pharma. I think most people know pharma by now. If you don't know pharma by now, you've been living under a rock, I feel like. But but most people, it's like the health thing, man, especially the food part of it. And it's not just food either. It's like I guess I'm too far into the tinfoil hat conversation. I might as well just say this. I've said it before on the podcast. But it's like a cell phone, man. Like you can't tell me that having this cell phone in your pocket, all day long, this thing is not producing radiation sitting there in your pocket, and you're absorbing that, the 5G or whatever. Look, people think I'm crazy. I won't put my phone in a close place like this coffee I'm drinking right here. I'm not going to put my phone directly to it because I don't know if that thing's putting off radiation into my, you know what I mean? It's like I don't trust that. I don't trust it.
Dude, I'm pretty there, right? Like my water, I have a water filter for under the sink that filters out specific for my zip code. And then I take that water and I put it in my clearly filtered water bottle that has another thing that does 99% because the fluorides in our water and the shit they put in our water, dude, like, and I'm glad somebody's actually, because I've always been that guy. Like, I'm always like, nope, I'm not drinking. I can't stand drinking out of a water bottle, the little plastic bottles. And now it's starting to be proven like what that plastic does to us, and that's another reason that where our testosterone levels are so low. But dude, and you almost feel like, I agree with you. You like, sometimes it's like that tinfoil hat, right? People look at you like, dude, this guy is freaking nuts. But then they come out, 5 or 6 years later, now everybody's like noticing how bad fluoride is for you. Like, I don't even drink caffeine. I haven't had caffeine in probably 20 some odd years, man. I haven't.
Oh, wow.
I haven't had a soda in 20 years. My bad thing is, well, I guess I do have caffeine with chocolate, but like, I don't drink anything. And that's my bad little thing, is chocolate or a candy here and there. And I'm trying to get rid of that. But sugar is the most addictive substance on earth, man. They show that rats are willing to chew off they'd rather have sugar than heroin. So yeah. It's pretty crazy, right?
Well, we can sit here, man, and we can sound crazy to maybe the person who is not aware of this, and we can sound like we're, pulling out the tinfoil hat, and especially with political election season, we can sound like we're, one side or the other. But it's like, the bottom line here is that health is absolutely critical to not just being healthy, but just like being able to withstand the pressures of the day, being able to sustain, we're talking about balance and working and this kind of thing, being able to sustain. Because I tell people all the time, if you got to be able to have stamina, you got to have the stamina to keep up. And I'm not saying being able to run a mile is obviously helpful, but it's, you take a person like I don't even know who's a safe person to mention these days. You take a person like Elon Musk, this guy who's like doing all these things, or I would say any political person in the stage today. It's like, how the hell are these people keeping up with this? Like, they got all this stuff going on. You see these people of the reason I was asking, I wanted to make this connection. The reason I was asking about because you mentioned this gentleman being 400 pounds. I was curious to see where he was in his success, in his life successfully, because I feel like these people who are exceptionally fit, who are exceptionally, quote unquote, healthy, I just feel like those people seem to do a lot more as far as, in their career, in their workspace, because they just have the energy levels. I feel like, I've met a lot of people who I would say are pretty good at what they do professionally, and they're like exceptionally fit people. And I've also met other people too who are doing well, but I just feel like you can't argue how important the health aspect of it is. And this isn't just about career. Obviously health is good for many different ways, or, reasons, but, I just feel like this is just such a thing that should be focused on, that's not being focused on. And it's easy to think about, okay, cigarettes, alcohol, like that's an easy one. But I think people need to be aware of what's going on with the food. I think people need to be aware of, the plastic water bottles, the sugar, the additives in the food. I've always heard that if you look at a list of ingredients, the shorter the list, the better it is. You don't want to get something that's got a huge list on it. But these things are just critical, man. And we talk about finding balance. We talk about I guess what you're working with is the balance of, it sounds like what you're working with is the balance of like the work-life balance is what we're kind of leading up to here. But I think also there's a balance too of diet, because you can't just, I think if you have a balanced diet, that's probably okay. But I know I have a preference on how I want it to be for myself. But yeah, I don't want it to seem like we're getting off the rails here by talking about this tinfoil hat stuff. But I think it's important. I think it is important to bring awareness to this, just in case somebody's not aware of it already, because I'm telling you, man, I don't see how you can live in today's world and not be, at least have this on your radar that this is a thing, the food and stuff.
Yeah, well, I agree. So I do like the food is one of the big, or being healthy is part of that balance, that work life balance, man. And to me, that is the one that most, I, I want to say that's the one that most of the guys are usually missing somewhere. And it might not be, some of the guys might be in good shape, but they're still sleeping only 5 hours out of the night or whatever.
Yep.
Right. It's, again, a study. There only one out of every 12,000 people actually function well with less than 7 to 8 hours of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there is a large list of what happens to your brain and your hormones and your focus and everything out when you get less than that 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Like, you just can't operate optimally. Yep. It's impossible. And again, that's that physical, right? And if your physical is good, then usually your mental state is going to follow. And that's just one of those things, right? It's like, I think I said it earlier, physiology drives your psychology. And it all starts with that sleep. It starts with being properly hydrated. And having the right kind of nutrition. And I think we're taught so much bad crap growing up. I mean, everything that I was taught growing up has been debunked, right? I mean, even to the fact that the Egyptians probably didn't build the damn pyramids. But the pyramid that they showed us for the foods, that thing is so effed up. Like, if you go by that pyramid and how they tell you to eat, you're going to be a sack of turds, man. Mm-hmm. Like now I do intermittent fasting every single day. I don't eat for 16 hours. I eat for a little 8-hour period. I try to fast probably 48 to even a 72-hour fast once a month. And they talk about the health benefits of that. Like, it's almost like getting stem cell, like the stem cell stuff that they do, because you can get rid of a lot of the bad stuff. And if people don't even, again, it's not communicated to anybody, because they'd rather have people feeling depressed, having all this sugar in them, because now they're fat and they have to take some kind of another medication. Now they have diabetes, they have all this stuff. And instead of optimizing people by giving them good stuff, we're going to just keep on feeding them the good old pharmaceutical drugs. And that's how we're going to fix everything. So yeah, to go right back to the balance, man, that is one of the biggest things that I have found is a lot of people, a lot of people know it. They just lack the discipline to do it because they're so disciplined in other aspects of their life. And it's kind of proven that you have a certain, you have like a canister of discipline, right? And you only have so much. So if you use it all over here, you have nothing left for over here. And that's what a lot of people end up falling into, that trap of not being balanced. And again, you said some great stuff, that a lot of those guys that you see that are really successful in business are in great shape. And that's happening more and more now. But if you look at those, 45 to 50, 55-year-old guys, they were all under that other old school thing of, just work your ass off. And sooner or later you're going to succeed. And maybe down the road, I might start exercising, but I got to make my business work first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. I wish somebody would have told me how important sleep was. Like, even before I started this whole fitness thing, man, I wish, because I used to be that guy, I mean, and maybe I was in my early 20s too, so maybe there's a connection there, but I used to be able to just sleep like 5 hours and be good, 4 or 5 hours and be good. But you mentioned it. I think that is right. I think if you sleep less than 4 hours, you have your testosterone drops to somebody who's like 10 years older than you, if you sleep like 4 to 5 hours. And that's like 10 years is a big jump, but yeah, I wish, man, that somebody would have said, hey, listen, sleep is important. Cause I mean, it's right. You're right. It's almost like we look at sleep or time off or any sort of rest as like, I don't really need it. I'll be okay. But you might have one 4 or 5 hour night a week in you, but if you're doing that every single night, or that's not going to be beneficial, man, or sustainable. So we talked about health, we talked about diet. I know that's a huge thing. We talked about kind of yourself, a person's self. I think that's also a huge thing. What in your professional line of work, what's some other things that you see that's really holding people back? Like, what is it that's really getting in their way, man? I know like a person's self, that's like a very big umbrella, and there's probably a lot of things that fall into that, the self-awareness, the vices, arrogance or lack of self. I mean, there's probably a lot of things that go into that, but just some examples of some other things that you've seen. What do you think some big things that's holding us back?
One of the biggest things and this is what I've learned, is gratitude, forgiveness, and empathy. Like, you can kind of use those three and they can intertwine, but when you actually have gratitude for where you're at and what you have, it helps that mindset, right? I'm not saying be satisfied, but be grateful, right? Like, I love the saying of, like, never be satisfied, but be thankful. Because once you get satisfied, then you fall backwards, right?
Yeah.
But being having gratification for and being gratitude for where you're at, it's just monster. And then being able to forgive yourself and be able to forgive others. Like, none of us are perfect, so we're all going to make mistakes. And once you learn that, hey, dude, it's okay to make mistakes, it allows you to grow more, right? Because so many of us get stuck. And this was me for so long, is I never wanted to make a mistake. So, like, I would cap myself because I knew how far up I could go without making a mistake. So I would never try to get beyond that point. But then when I figured out, you know what, it's okay to make a mistake, dude. Nobody's perfect. And there's a little saying that, like, Brian Johnson uses, either you win or you learn, and learning is winning. So it's always a win kind of deal.
Yep.
And learning that, dude, it's so, like, it just expands that whole possibility for everything, because it takes away that cap. It like that, they talk about the fleas in the jar, right? They only go up to the cap, and then once they get trained, you can pull off that cap and the fleas still won't jump out of that thing. And that's kind of the same thing that happens to us. We get so confined in our own mind, and a lot of it's just not allowing yourself to forgive yourself, because we have to be perfect. But nah, dude, it's okay not to be perfect. And then having that empathy for other people and the other people's situation also allows you to grow. So I love to use, like, those three things a lot in my life. And I usually find that a good majority of people, that aren't balanced or optimizing their life, are usually lacking one of those. And just making them aware of that little thing, man, they're like, oh shit, like, I never even thought about that, that little things like that. And then throwing the communication on top of that, you can just keep wrapping little, and that's where I talk about, building that foundation. And that foundation all starts with the four pillars, and each pillar has its own little group that you have to build around.
Yeah, that's pretty big. Because you were talking about comparing yourself, and I think we mentioned this earlier. You said you didn't want to, well, you just said this, but we were talking about earlier about comparison, but you said you didn't want to make a mistake. You didn't want to fail because you didn't want to, what was the word you used? You didn't want to, I think it's like the same for most people, though. I think it's like you don't want to, and I know we talked about this earlier about the link to self-worth, but it's like, if we go out and fail and we try this thing and we fail, the question of why is that linked to self-worth is a very huge question that I probably can't answer on this podcast or at all, if I'm being honest. but
I think,
go ahead.
Like that link of not feeling that self-worth, for me, it came from, like, my childhood, right? Like, I had a pretty bad childhood. So, like, I wasn't grateful for anything. And I I felt like everything, I had to go scratch and find everything that I got. So I wasn't grateful for it. So like my self-worth was small, and I always was looking for external gratification, right? I
Mm-hmm.
needed somebody else to tell me that I was a decent guy, or, oh, you're good looking, or whatever, like whatever it is, right? But once you become like good with yourself, that I think that's kind of that self-worth, right? That you have to be okay with yourself, and being okay with yourself is allowing for forgiveness for yourself, because I never forgave myself for anything, and I just kept building up all kinds of stupid little things going, man, like and now, hey man, I know I'm going to make mistakes. I know I'm going to screw up some stuff. I'm going to try to be the best person I can be. But that took off my cap, man, and it allowed that self-awareness. I know where I'm at now, so it allows me to expand as big as I can dream, and as big as I can go, man. And am I going to get there perfectly? Nah, hell no. I'm going to freaking probably fall, stumble, kick, but as long as I keep getting back up, sooner or later I'm going to get closer than I was.
Yeah. Man, I wonder how most people define failure. Like, is it something that they hear somebody else say and they think, oh, well, if I don't do this thing, I fail? I mean, because like there's laws, like we obviously have laws in the country, and we have things like a credit score and all that kind of stuff. And there's like parameters, I guess you could put on this and different metrics. But it's like if a person fails, so if you try to do a thing and it's your idea to do it and it fails, where does that definition of failure come from? Does it come from what people think that people might think about them if the thing doesn't work out? Or does it come from something in themselves where they say, hey, I tried to do this and this didn't work the way I thought it would? Because I think just talking to people, man, I think it's the former for a lot of people. I think a lot of people let other people define what failure is for them. Like if we try to do something and we can't keep up with the people next door or whatever, for some reason that means we failed at this thing.
I 100,000% agree with you. I think failure has been defined by an outside source, right? Because if you believe in yourself, and you believe in what you're aiming at, and you have the correct goals, and again, if you allow yourself to know that you're not going to be perfect, there is no such thing as failure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, the outside sources are the ones that told Thomas Edison his 5,000 or 15,000 failures were failures. The way he looked at it, no, that was successful one, because I was succeeding, because now I know that didn't work, right?
Yeah.
So if you change your mindset, like, there is no such thing as failure inside of you. You can make that happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so many of us are told all the time, and we see that shit on Facebook or whatever. Oh, this guy failed, or this girl failed, or and it's all done by outside source, man. I agree. That is I'm glad you said that. That's pretty awesome. It's 100%. I agree with you.
Well, what's crazy, man, is like the same people that tell you can't do a thing, that it can't be done, that you're not going to succeed at it, are the same people that say to you parts of the process are failures. So if you try to build a thing and something doesn't work out, you get knocked down, you have to stand back up. Those people are going to tell you that knockdown is a failure and you just shouldn't do it. And this is proof that you shouldn't do it. But like, it's the way I see it. And one thing that's really helped me out is like, this is part of the process, like, okay, who do I want to be? Well, I want to be this person that does these specific things. Okay, well, how do I get there? Well, this is how I think I'm going to get there. Then I try to do the thing. And it's like this whole big, you go on all these different tangents trying to get there. But it's like, that's part of the process, man. Like if a person has, if they want to be a person who has $100 million in the bank, well, you're probably not going to get there and just everything be smooth along the way. You're going to you're going to lose money and, probably go back. I think it's like, but the majority of millionaires, I think, go bankrupt at some point in their life before they, hit it big or, make the big bucks or whatever. But it's like, it really helps me to just see that, what, this is part of the process. Now, I'm not saying go out and intentionally try to fail or anything, but, when these setbacks happen, when these things happen, if you have if the goal is big enough and it means enough to you, you can help yourself believe that is part of the process, because it is. I mean, it is. It's like every success, I feel like, was built on the failures along the way. And it sounds so cliche to say, it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get up. But that's true. That's all it is, man. Every person who has ever succeeded at anything, all they did was got back up one more time than they got knocked down. I mean, and it's like, and especially now, I don't mind saying it, especially now, you look at a person like Donald Trump, who has been through, forget the politician. Let's talk about the businessman. The dude, I think there was that one time he was like negative, not like $900 million or something. And it's just like that kind of perseverance. Elon Musk is the same way. He was on the verge of losing his company, and was able to just push through. I mean, it's that kind of resilience and determination and the ability to look at failure as a stepping stone. Man, I think that's absolutely critical. Yeah. If there was one thing I wish I could like just help everybody with immediately, it would be to understand that the process along the thing is the prize of what you're trying to do. I have a bracelet on right now that says the journey is the prize. And so, we think about, oh, I want to, build a company that's 7 figures and all this kind of stuff. But it's like, that's a good thing. And that's admirable. And if you do that, then congratulations. But it's like the journey that it takes to do that, like who you become in the process of that, man. Like, because I say all the time, and I guess it's easy to say this on the outside looking in, but it's like, if you were to do these things, build a company, or, change your life around, beat an addiction, find the perfect partner, whatever it is, like that end result is a really good thing, but you become the person who is able to do that in the process. Like when it's all said and done, and you're looking at that business, you're looking at that perfect partner, you're walking out of that place because you just beat that addiction, you become the person who could do that. And that's invaluable. I mean, we all could lose our career, our business, or whatever tomorrow. We could do it today, but it's like what we learned in the process of that, I feel like that is the take home. To me, that's like the payment, I don't want to say payment, but it's like, that's the reward, is like who it takes, like becoming the person that it takes to build those things in the process. And I mean, maybe looking at it that way, it helps me, I think, like I said, look at this thing as like, okay, well, this is part of the process. Like I took this failure here, got knocked down here. And it's like, it helps me to stay consistent and to stay dedicated towards the end goal,
100%, dude. 2 things. Like on the book, the full title is Asshole to Awesome, The Journey to Joy and Happiness, right?
Love it. I love it.
And it's a journey, just like you said, dude, because am I ever going to truly reach, like, awesome to me is like a distant star. It's just like where I'm headed. I'm never going to get there. I know it. It's not a final destination. It's a total process of it. That's why I use journey, to joy and happiness, because like now I know that I'm way more happy inside, and like being happy with myself, I can experience more joy, right? A lot of people think of joy and happiness are like temporary things, going to get drunk or getting high, whatever, right? You get happy and you do that shit. But like just truly enjoying the process, dude, it's huge. And that's what it took a long time. And I don't think a lot of people enjoy the process. There's this story of this golfer, and I love this story because this guy, he never won on tour, right? And he went and got a coach, and the coach told him everything that they did was all about process. Every shot, there was a process to every shot. And then on Sunday, he ends up rolling on 18th hole. He rolls in after doing his process. He rolls in the putt, and everybody's going crazy. And he didn't even know he won. Like, he was so much into his process and enjoying the process. His wife came down and he goes, "Did I win?" And like, that story is just freaking, I wish I had the dude's name. I maybe I can find it and I'll get it to you. But the story of that guy shows that if you can focus on the process, dude, you can do whatever you want. That guy never won on the tour before, playing against the best players in the world. And he figured out a process that all he did was follow that shit, or, follow it all the way down the line. And he ended up winning. And it's just like, that's a perfect metaphor for life, man. Enjoy the process. Figure out what you're where you're aiming and enjoy it. It's not going to be fun. It's not always going to be, rainbows and bubbles being blown up your butt. Sometimes you're going to step in a pile of dog crap. Sometimes you're going to stub your toe. But man, enjoy the process, dude. Know the process, or know where you're heading. It's awesome that you said that. That I love the process thing, man. And
Yeah, I was saying, if you have, if the goal is big enough, something's definitely going to come around and test how bad you really want it. And I just feel like if you're committed to the process, then that helps you along the way to stay consistent towards the goal. And you mentioned something else too that I like, that you said awesome is something you'll never really reach awesome. And I just feel like, I feel like that's one of the ways that we can like, if we tell ourselves that we will never get to the person that we want to become, I think that's one thing that ensures we're always going to grow. We're always going to be on that path of trying to grow and trying to improve. I think that's what it's all about, man. I think that's a big part of, me personally. I think a big part of what we're here to do is learn and evolve, and grow spiritually as people. So, because I definitely believe there's a higher power, and I definitely feel like, what we do here, I feel like affects what happens after here. In this where we're at now. So, I want to make sure that you have enough time for this, because I'm going to have to get out of here in a couple minutes. So where do you have a website? Where can people find you online or social media?
Yeah, ernestwood.com. Super easy. My name.com. You can actually go there and download a free copy of the book. If you want to buy a copy, it's on Amazon. Like I said, all profits do go to help like a little guy who's fighting leukemia, or somebody next month. You can also schedule a time so we can do like a little discovery call and see if maybe I'm a good fit to be a coach. I look forward to hearing from somebody, and just hopefully, man, like what we talked about earlier, those little acts of kindness, try to get as many out there as possible, and just make it is, not the cliche part, but make everybody around you a little bit better every day, and
For sure.
and yourself, right?
Yep. So, and if you'll send me those links, I'll put them in the descriptions for the videos. So one thing that I always ask people before we close, I know it's hard to say the most important, but if you could pinpoint one of the most important lessons you've ever learned, it could be, if it's something you're comfortable sharing from your personal life, professional life, what do you think would be one of the most important lessons you've ever learned?
Man, I just learned this lesson not too long ago. My mom died about 8 months ago from cancer. Like, it just ravaged her body.
I'm sorry.
And she went out, like, we got in an argument about 3 years ago, and we finally started talking maybe 7 months, 8 months before she found out, or she actually didn't even find out she had cancer. She had a stroke, went into the hospital, found out that she had cancer, and passed away. Did I lose you?
I'm sorry. You actually did. You said you had an argument about 3 years ago.
Yeah, so we had an argument about 3 years ago, and we started talking about maybe a little less than a year ago. And when she had her stroke and then found out she had cancer, I was always like her executive. I'm the oldest child, so I was the executor of her will and all that stuff. And coming to find out, my mom cut me out of the will, and it hurt. But what hurt even worse was, like, I went and chatted with her, and I told her, hey, Mom, I forgive you. Let's make sure that we're good before you pass. And I apologize. I wish, this would have never happened. And she's like, well, you can shit in one hand and wish in the other one, and see which one fills up first. To me, and the reason I tell this story is that lack of forgiveness, man. I know that it ate her up inside, and I would never, ever want to go out in my entire life holding a grudge to somebody. It just, like, I don't know how you would want to do that, man. So to me, forgiveness is one of the biggest things in the world, man. Everybody has their crap going on. People are going to make mistakes. Forgive yourself, forgive others, and just move on, man. It is what it is. The only thing you can control in life is your emotions and how you react to something, or not react, respond to something, right? We don't want to react. Yeah, that would be the thing, man. Is that was the biggest lesson I ever learned was don't don't die without holding grudges, man.
Yeah, forgiveness is huge, man. You know, forgiveness is I feel like there's a reason that, you know, I feel like most religions talk about religion or forgiveness, and that's because it's big. We were talking about health earlier. I don't know. I'm sure you know this, but there's actual like connections to people who like experience a lot of anger. There's like certain forms of cancer those people experience. People with forgiveness. You know, if a person has a difficult time forgiving somebody, you know, cancer's a link to that, and that's crazy. There's a link to that, but I just feel like, man, I think I think sometimes maybe we feel like if we forgive a person, like I know I've definitely been here. If I forgive a person like that, somehow, you know, that makes me weak. If I forgive this person, like, oh, they did this to me, so I should, if I forgive them, this, you know, X, Y, Z. But it's like, I don't know, man. I think it's bigger than that. I think it's a lot bigger than that, you know. And that's definitely, like you said, how you respond to it. Well, if I respond to it in that way, as far as I'm concerned, then that's my fault, you know. It's, I don't know, it's huge, but the world definitely, especially with all of us, each other, with everything that's going on these days, we definitely, forgiveness is huge, you know, because without forgiveness, we can't unite that's as a country, as a society, as a world, you know, it's huge. Um, Listen, man, I'm going to get out of here a little bit. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time, your wisdom. We hit on a lot of stuff today. And I think it was timed appropriately. So
That was
I don't
pretty
know.
good timing. Pretty
Yeah,
good timing.
yeah. I'm hopeful for everything there, but so all right, I'm gonna stop the video. Let me talk to you just for a second. Don't leave
Yeah.
just yet. I'm gonna tell you about the upload and all that good stuff. But man, I definitely appreciate your time.
Nah, thank you. Thank you. It was fun, man.
Hey guys, I appreciate you tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find more content at Pure Wisdom Podcast. This is on Facebook, Instagram, Rumble, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and Google Podcasts. There you can like, share, subscribe, and we will see you next time.